been a while. Not really gonna go into where I've been because I don't really have any excuse. I have been taking a hiatus on social media in general and on YouTube. I haven't filmed any videos. I haven't watched many videos on YouTube for this past month. I went on a cruise towards the end of June, which was a fabulous time with two of my friends. So I just really wanted to, after that, just decompress, take some time away from the internet, and I am back. I'm excited, and I have a great wrap up to share with you. So I'm going to be talking about the books that I read in June and July. So let's just get started. So like I mentioned, I went on a cruise towards the end of June. I didn't focus on a ton of books in June because I thought, oh, that last week when I'm on that cruise, I'm gonna read like crazy. So I'll just focus most of my reading that week. I ended up not reading very much and only finishing one book in the month of June, and that was Ancient Egypt, A Very Short History by Ian Shaw. This was one of the books for June for my TBR challenge that I was supposed to read. So I was able to complete my TBR challenge for June, even though this is the only book that I completed in June. But this is basically just a very short, comprehensive take on ancient Egypt and Egyptology. So I don't know if you've been watching my videos for a while. I've kind of been on this ancient Egypt kick. I started off by reading Cleopatra by Stacy Schiff, and that got me really intrigued about Cleopatra as a person and just kind of figuring out kind of realizing that a lot about what we know about Cleopatra is not necessarily accurate or an exaggeration of the truth. So that got me interested in learning more about ancient Egypt and just Egyptian history in general. So I had this book for a while, and I'm glad that it came up in my June TBR challenge picks because I really enjoyed it. It's definitely a very short and brief history. It covers a lot of different topics about ancient Egypt, but it's all kind of centralized around the Narmer Palette, which is an Egyptian artifact that they found that kind of depicts this scene of the Narmer king taking over and unifying both the North and South Egypt. It talks about the different methods that they use to excavate different ancient ruins and that sort of thing, but it also goes into a lot of the popular pharaohs that we know in pop culture and how what we know from pop culture kind of differs from the reality of what we know about these pharaohs. And I really enjoyed it. So this was definitely a good introduction into ancient Egypt. But well, another book that I finished in July kind of deepens that, so I definitely think this is a good place to start if you're wanting to learn more about Egyptian history, and it has a lot of useful resources too in the back. So if you're interested in reading more, this book comes with a lot of different options for you to further your knowledge on Egyptian history. So after I finished that book, I started reading When Breath Becomes Air, which was also another book on my TBR challenge. My goal for June was actually to read all 3 of the books. I only got through the one book in June, but I did start this one in June and finish it in July. So I'm counting it as my July TBR challenge book since I didn't make any picks for July. So I did end up reading a book on my TBR for July. So this is a book. So this is When Breath Becomes Air by Paul Kalanithi. And this I actually bought for my sister a long time ago because it's about a doctor who is battling lung cancer. But during his battle, he's also going through residency. So I thought it would be a great book for my sister to read. She really ended up enjoying it, and she let me borrow it so I could read it as well. And I'm finally now getting to it, and I really enjoyed this book. So Paul was a neurosurgeon, or going to school to become a neurosurgeon, but he started his college career as an English student and got a bachelor's in English, and then decided that his calling was actually in the medical field. But during his residency, he was diagnosed with lung cancer, and basically the story follows his thoughts throughout that experience, what it's like going through the process of becoming a doctor and then becoming a patient. So I thought this book was very inspirational, and Paul he writes very, very well. Like, you can definitely tell that he was passionate about English and passionate about writing, and I think that seeps through in the entire story. The way he writes is just so beautiful, even if you don't really gel with the story, which I wouldn't understand because it's such a heartbreaking and beautiful story, but the way he writes it is such a beautiful way too. I absolutely love this story, and I love how he breaks it up into two parts. So the first part kind of talks about his life growing up and everything leading up to him going to school to become a neurosurgeon, and then the second part is after he finds out that he is diagnosed with lung cancer and everything that happens up until his death. So it's just a very, very inspiring book. The amount that he is able to do, he actually finishes his residency while he's going through chemotherapy, all of that, so that you just feel like, wow, this is an amazing person, and it gives you the inspiration to feel like, I just was so inspired by this book that there is so much that I can do now in my own life, in the productivity of my own life, if this guy is able to accomplish so much in the last years of his life as well. So it really makes you think about immortality and what it means to really make a name for yourself and all of that. I just absolutely love this book, and if you have not read it, it's definitely worth the read. It's definitely a nonfiction book that I will be buying for myself to have in my collection. So I will be returning this back to my sister. So the next book I actually listened to on Audible, and it's called We Crossed a Bridge and It Trembled, Voices from Syria. And this was edited by Wendy Perlman. So I have been wanting to read a lot of books on the Syria crisis. I've been wanting to read a book about the Syria crisis for a very long time. I actually have a few physical books in my collection that I've been meaning to read, but this one spoke to me because it's a collection of people that I believe Wendy encountered and interviewed, and it's basically their stories that they've told. I really liked that it took their actual stories into a collection rather than kind of telling it from Wendy's perspective, and I thought it just brought a very personable feel to the stories, and I think that listening to it was also a very good choice because it just brings that emotional feel to the stories. The collection is broken up into about 4 parts, so it follows the progression of the Syria crisis very thoroughly, and it kind of talks about what happened in the beginning all the way up into the present. So it kind of covers every different aspect of these people's lives, and each story varies in the complexity and the length. So there are some stories that are just a couple paragraphs that kind of set the stage for the time period that is being discussed. Others are more in depth. Some of them are multiple pages that cover their different interactions and how are they dealing with that moment in their life. So I really, really enjoyed this. I think it's a very good introduction to learning about what's going on in Syria and also learning about the refugee crisis, because it does have like a section about what it was like for these people leaving Syria and trying to find asylum in other countries. She also has, in the beginning of the introduction of this collection, she also does a brief like history about the timeline of what is being covered in this book. So that gave, if you're not very familiar with this topic, I think that gives you like a very good introduction into the story, and it kind of helps you orient yourself when you are reading each section of the book. So I really, really enjoyed this. I thought it was very well done. I really enjoyed listening to it. It was very emotional for me to get through, but it's definitely something that I am happy I ended up reading, and it definitely makes me want to read more of the books that I have on Syria and get more information about what is going on. So definitely recommend this, and definitely would recommend the audio version of this book. And the last book that I got through in July, I have been reading this book for literally almost 3 months. It is The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. So this is a huge mammoth of a book. I don't actually have a physical copy because I borrowed one from my coworker, and I'm kind of glad that I ended up borrowing a copy from someone rather than buying it myself, because I didn't really enjoy this book as much as I thought I was going to. Don't get me wrong, I think Patrick Rothfuss has a very good, a beautiful writing style, and I really enjoyed the writing of the book. But I did not really like the main character of this story, and I think because the book is so surrounded and centralized around this main character, that it made it very difficult for me to really feel invested in the story in general. So if you're not familiar with this book, it's an epic fantasy about a man named Kvothe. He has done a lot of amazing and spectacular things in his life, and and this person wants to kind of chronicle his life experiences. So basically this basically guy gives him 3 days to cover tell him his life story in 3 days. So the first book covers the first day of him retelling his story. So the story starts off when he's very young, he's with his parents, and then it goes off into when he starts this magical school. So it follows him a lot, and most of the story is in first person. So I get that a lot of people mention that Kvothe is supposed to be an unreliable narrator. We're supposed to take everything that he says with a grain of salt, and I understand that, and I get that he is telling his story, so it is going to be a little more centered on him. But to me, I didn't really like Kvothe. He just seems like a very, annoying person. He's a very smart and intelligent person, and he knows a lot beyond his years, but the way he talks about his knowledge just seems to come off as if he's very arrogant, and I did not really enjoy that. And I just really didn't like that because we're talking about his life story, there's not really a full plot in the first book. It kind of is just setting the stage, I guess, for the next 2 books in the series. So there's not really a conclusion to this book, and I didn't really find a reason to why I wanted to continue. I did continue reading it. I actually ended up having to purchase it on Audible because listening to it was just easier for me because I could do other things while I was listening to the book. So I ended up finishing it in audio form, but I did not really like the story. I could not follow it so there is this central story about these mythical people called the Chandrian, which I really did like. I liked that plot line, but obviously that's not really it doesn't come to a conclusion because there's still 2 more books in the series. But the rest of it seems to just go on and meandering, and you don't really understand what the point of it is. There's a lot of different minor characters that don't really seem to add anything to the story. They're kind of just there to support Kvothe. And then you have the love interest, which to me I really did not enjoy. I don't really understand what her appeal is. He talks about how beautiful she is and how he can't describe how attractive and how much he was interested in her, but to me she didn't really offer anything. She was kind of this bland character, and to me a lot of the women in this book are very poorly portrayed. They come off as if they're very strong and independent, but in any serious situation Kvothe is always there to rescue them and save the day. So I didn't really like how a lot of the women were portrayed, and I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to be continuing on with the series. I know the second book is out and he still has yet to write the third book, and I'm not sure if I'm really into it that much that I'm willing to wait for the third book to ever come out and finish the series. My friend at work did tell me that the second book does kind of split and talk a little bit more about different characters, so that might interest me a little bit more because I just was not Quoth was just not vibing. I just did not really enjoy him. So I don't know if I'm gonna continue on with the second book, just because it is such a huge book and it will take a lot of time for me to read because I am kind of a slow reader. So I don't know if I want to invest all of that time into reading the second one when I didn't really enjoy the first one all that much. So yeah, I'm just not sure how I feel and how I want to proceed with this series, but I'm kind of disappointed because I really wanted to enjoy this book and I thought I was going to enjoy it from the beginning. Like, I really liked the parts where he was in the present, I guess, telling the chronicler about his story, and I liked that part of the story, but I just did not like the actual story. So I don't know. Yeah, so those are all the books that I got through in June and July. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments below what you read this month, and if you have any opinions about whether or not I should continue on with the Kingkiller series, please let me know. I want to know if the next book, what's the next one called? The Wise Man's Fear, is better, if I should continue reading the series. So let me know in the comments if you've read both books and you think that I should continue on. So thanks again for watching, and I will see you guys very soon with my TBR challenge update and my picks for August. Thanks again. Bye.